The great chamber of the Valorian High Council stretched endlessly into the darkness above. Thousands of holographic displays floated in the air, each showing different star systems, resource calculations, and military formations. The 12 members of the Supreme Dominion sat in their elevated seats, their silver robes catching the blue light from the central projection table. High Commander Zorthax leaned forward, his 4 eyes narrowing as he studied the small blue planet, rotating slowly in the hologram before them. His scaled skin reflected the planet's glow as he tapped his long fingers against the armrest of his throne. "This world," he said, his voice echoing through the massive hall, "contains resources we have never seen anywhere else in this galaxy. Their oceans hold minerals that could power our fleet for 10,000 cycles. Their atmosphere produces compounds we cannot synthesize, and most importantly, their population is primitive. They have barely reached beyond their own moon." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the council. Admiral Vexnus, her elongated skull crowned with ceremonial jewels, nodded slowly. "Our scouts report they call themselves humans," she added. "They spend most of their time fighting among themselves. They have divided their planet into hundreds of separate territories. They cannot even agree on basic matters of governance. Conquering them should take no more than 3 rotations of their sun." The council members exchanged satisfied glances. For 800 cycles, the Valorian Dominion had expanded across the Andromeda sector, absorbing world after world into their empire. No species had successfully resisted them. Their technology was superior, their military unmatched, and their reputation alone had caused entire civilizations to surrender without firing a single weapon. "I propose we send the 3rd expansion fleet," High Commander Zorthax declared. 50 warships should be more than enough to secure this planet and establish mining operations. Within 1 cycle, we will have— "No!" The single word cut through the chamber like a blade. Every head turned toward the far corner where a figure sat in shadow. The council members shifted uncomfortably as the speaker slowly rose from his seat and stepped into the light. Admiral Korvath was ancient by Valorian standards. His scales had faded to a dull gray, and his movements were slow and deliberate, but his eyes, all 4 of them, burned with an intensity that made younger officers look away. He had served the Dominion for 300 cycles, had conquered 47 worlds, and had earned every medal the Empire could bestow. He had also not spoken in a council meeting for 50 cycles. Many had assumed he was simply waiting to die. "Admiral Korvath," High Commander Zorthax said carefully, "we are honored by your presence, but surely you cannot object to such a simple acquisition. Look at them." He gestured at the hologram, zooming in on images of human cities. "They drive wheeled vehicles. They communicate through primitive electromagnetic signals. They have nuclear weapons that they have not even figured out how to properly contain. They are children." Admiral Korvath walked slowly toward the center of the chamber. Each step seemed to carry the weight of centuries. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet but carried to every corner of the vast hall. 50 cycles ago," he began, "I commanded the 19th Expedition Fleet. We were mapping the outer reaches of this galaxy when we encountered a small vessel. It was crude, made of metal alloys we considered obsolete. It had no weapons we could detect. It carried only 4 occupants." He paused, letting the silence build. They were humans. Admiral Vexnus made a dismissive sound. "1 vessel, Admiral? 4 creatures? Surely this cannot be—" "They had traveled for 17 of their years," Korvath continued, ignoring her interruption. 17 years in a metal box smaller than my personal quarters. They had left behind everything they knew, everyone they loved, with no certainty they would ever return. They did this simply because they wanted to know what was out there. High Commander Zorthax frowned. "I fail to see—" "We captured them, of course," Korvath said. "We intended to study them, learn about their world, perhaps use them as interpreters when we eventually colonize their planet. I assigned my best scientists to examine them. The old admiral's eyes grew distant, as if looking at something only he could see. Within 6 of their days, they had killed 2 of my scientists, escaped their containment cells, sabotaged our primary power core, and transmitted everything they had learned about our technology back to their home world using equipment they had built from spare parts they had stolen. Shocked silence filled the chamber. When we finally cornered them, they did not surrender. They did not beg for mercy. One of them looked directly at me and said that if we ever approached their world, we would regret it for the rest of our very short lives. Admiral Vexness laughed nervously. Admiral, with respect, 4 captured primitives caused some damage. This is hardly a reason to— They were not soldiers, Korvath said sharply. They were scientists, explorers, the least dangerous members of their species. And they killed 2 of our best warriors with their bare hands. He turned to face the council directly. I spent the next 50 cycles studying everything we could learn about Earth. I have watched them through long-range observation. I have intercepted their communications. I have analyzed their history. He activated a small device on his wrist, and new images appeared in the hologram. Images of human warfare throughout history. Ancient battles with swords and spears, explosions from their world wars, mushroom clouds rising over destroyed cities. These creatures have spent their entire existence fighting, not against external enemies, but against each other. They have developed countless ways to kill. They have built weapons capable of destroying their entire planet, and they have come close to using them multiple times. The images shifted again, showing humans in extreme environments, climbing frozen mountains, diving into crushing ocean depths, surviving in scorching deserts. Their world is what our scientists would classify as a death world. The gravity is crushing, the atmosphere is corrosive, the planet is filled with predators, diseases, and natural disasters, and they have not merely survived, they have thrived. They have conquered every environment on their planet. Admiral Korvath walked to the edge of the projection table and placed both hands on its surface. They are not primitive because they are weak. They are primitive because they are young. They have existed as a species for only a fraction of the time we have. And in that time, they have gone from hitting each other with rocks to splitting atoms. He looked directly at High Commander Zorthax. Consider what they will be capable of in another 1,000 cycles. Consider what they will do if we give them a reason to unite against a common enemy. High Commander Zorthax shifted in his seat. Admiral, I understand your concerns. But the Valorian Dominion has never been defeated. Our technology is centuries ahead of theirs. Our warriors are trained from birth. We have conquered species far more advanced than these humans. Have you conquered a species that refuses to surrender? Korvath asked. Have you conquered a species that would rather die than submit? Have you conquered a species that will hunt you to the ends of the universe for revenge? He pulled up another image, a recording from an intercepted human transmission. It showed a human soldier, wounded and bleeding, refusing to give information to his captors despite obvious torture. They call this loyalty, Korvath said. They call this honor. We have no equivalent concept in our language because we have never faced an enemy with such traits. Admiral Vexness stood up angrily. This is fear-talking. Admiral Korvath has grown old and timid. The Valorian Dominion does not cower from primitive planets. Several council members voiced their agreement. High Commander Zorthax raised his hand for silence. Admiral Korvath, he said carefully, your service to the Dominion is legendary. Your wisdom has guided us through many difficult decisions. But I believe your encounters with these humans have left you with an exaggerated impression of their capabilities. Korvath stared at him for a long moment. I have given you my warning, he said finally. I have told you what I know. You may ignore it if you wish, but remember this. When you draw Earth's notice, You cannot take it back. They will not stop at defending themselves. They will not be satisfied with pushing you back to your borders. They will find out who sent you. They will learn everything about you. And they will come for you. He began walking toward the exit, his footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. You do not want to draw Earth's notice, he said without turning around, because once they know you exist, once they know you are a threat, they will not rest until you no longer are. The chamber doors closed behind him with a heavy sound. High Commander Zorthax waited until the old Admiral's footsteps faded completely. Then he turned to his council with a dismissive gesture. Admiral Korvath's service has been distinguished, but his time has passed. He sees threats in shadows. The Dominion did not build an empire of 2,000 worlds by listening to frightened old soldiers. Admiral Vexnus nodded eagerly. I volunteer to lead the third expansion fleet personally. I will bring you this Earth as a gift to the Dominion. Excellent, Zorthax said with satisfaction. You will depart in 3 rotations. Take 60 ships instead of 50, not because we need them, but because I want this conquest completed quickly. I want the humans to see the full might of the Valorian Dominion and know that resistance is pointless. As the council members began discussing logistics and timetables, none of them noticed the small observation drone hovering in the shadows above, and none of them knew that Admiral Korvath had already begun making preparations of his own. Because despite what the council believed, Korvath was not afraid. He was simply old enough to recognize when he was looking at a predator. 3 rotations later, Admiral Vexnus stood on the command deck of the Dominion's Glory, flagship of the 3rd Expansion Fleet. 60 warships stretched out behind her, each one capable of destroying a small moon. The fleet had traveled through 4 jump gates to reach this remote corner of the galaxy. Ahead of them, growing larger with each passing moment, was Earth. Status report, she commanded. Her tactical officer checked his displays. No defensive installations detected in orbit, no weapons platforms. Their primitive space station appears to have only 6 occupants. They have a few hundred satellites, mostly for communication and observation. Admiral Vexnus smiled. Send them the standard greeting. Inform them that the Valorian Dominion claims this world. All inhabitants will submit to relocation to designated areas. Any resistance will be met with immediate force. The communication officer transmitted the message in every human language their database contained. For several minutes, there was no response. Perhaps they do not understand, the tactical officer suggested. Then the communication array lit up with an incoming transmission. Admiral Vexnus signaled for it to be displayed. A human face appeared on the screen. It was an older male, with gray hair and lines around his eyes. He wore some kind of uniform covered in medals and symbols. His expression was calm, almost amused. This is General Marcus Webb of the United Nations Defense Council, the human said. We received your message. Before you take any further action, I have been authorized to tell you something important. Admiral Vexnus leaned forward. You have been authorized to surrender? The human smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. No, he said. I have been authorized to tell you that 50 of your years ago, we received a transmission from 4 of our people, scientists. They told us about your empire. They told us you would probably come for us eventually. Admiral Vexnus felt a strange coldness in her chest. We have spent the last 50 years preparing for this conversation, the human continued. We have studied everything those scientists sent us. We have improved on it. We have built things you cannot imagine. His smile widened. So here is my message. Turn around. Leave this system. Never come back. This is your only warning. Admiral Vexnus forced herself to laugh. You dare threaten the Valorian Dominion? We have conquered 2,000 worlds. You will die, the human interrupted, his voice suddenly cold. All of you. Unless you leave, right now. The transmission ended. Admiral Vexness stood in shock for a moment. Then her face twisted with rage. "All ships, battle formation! Target their major population centers. We will show these insects what happens to those who insult the Dominion." As the fleet began to move into position, none of them noticed the small distortions appearing in space around them. None of them detected the power signatures building on the planet below. And none of them knew that humanity had been waiting for this moment for 50 years. General Marcus Webb stood in the command center buried 3 kilometers beneath the mountains of Colorado. Around him, hundreds of screens displayed feeds from satellites, ground stations, and assets that officially did not exist. The room hummed with quiet activity as technicians monitored systems that had been ready for this moment for decades. His aide, Colonel Sarah Chen, approached with a tablet showing the alien fleet's formation. "They are moving into attack position," she reported. 60 vessels, configuration matches the intelligence we received 50 years ago, but their ships appear larger than projected. Webb nodded slowly. "They have had 50 years to improve their technology. So have we." He turned to the main screen where the Valorian fleet hung in space like silver daggers pointed at Earth. For 50 years, he had wondered what this moment would feel like. Humanity's first real test against an interstellar power, the moment that would determine whether their species would continue to exist. He felt nothing but cold determination. "Signal all orbital stations," he ordered. "Bring the Aegis network online. Inform all member nations that Protocol Prometheus is now active." Across the planet, buried facilities came to life. In bunkers beneath Nevada, Siberia, the Sahara, and Antarctica, massive power generators began to hum. Satellites that the world believed were simple communication relays revealed their true nature, unfolding weapon systems that humanity had never publicly acknowledged. Colonel Chen watched her displays with growing excitement. "All systems showing green. The network is at full power." "And the secondary systems?" "Standing by. We have confirmation from all 12 carriers. Project Valkyrie is ready for deployment." Webb allowed himself a small smile. Those 4 scientists who had been captured so long ago had bought humanity something precious: time. Time to prepare. Time to build. Time to become something more than what they had been. The aliens thought they were attacking primitives. They were about to learn the truth. On the bridge of the Dominion's glory, Admiral Vexness watched with satisfaction as her fleet locked weapons onto the planet below. The humans had gone silent after their ridiculous threat. Perhaps they had finally understood the hopelessness of their situation. "Fleet is in position," her weapons officer reported. "All ships ready to fire on your command." "Target their largest cities first," Vexness ordered. "Show them the cost of defiance." Before the weapons officer could respond, every alarm on the bridge activated simultaneously. Red lights flashed. Warning sounds filled the air. Officers shouted over each other in confusion. "Report!" Vexness demanded. "Admiral, we are detecting massive energy signatures from the planet's surface. Multiple locations. Power levels are impossible. They are off our scales." "From where? What kind of weapons?" The tactical officer's face went pale. "Everywhere, Admiral. They are everywhere." The first beam came from what appeared to be an ordinary communications satellite in low orbit. It struck the destroyer Vengeful Dawn at the speed of light. There was no warning, no time to react. The ship's shields, the most advanced defensive technology the Valorian Dominion possessed, held for exactly 1.3 seconds. Then the Vengeful Dawn ceased to exist. It did not explode. It did not break apart. The beam simply erased it from existence, converting matter directly into energy in a reaction the Valorian scientists had theorized about but never achieved. Before anyone could process what had happened, more beams came, dozens of them. From satellites, from hidden platforms on the planet's dark side, from what looked like civilian cargo vessels. They struck from every direction simultaneously. Admiral Vexness watched in horror as ship after ship vanished from her display. The pride of Valoria, veteran of 40 campaigns, gone. The Conqueror's might, whose crew had never known defeat, erased. The Night Hunter and her wolf pack of escort vessels destroyed before they could even begin evasive maneuvers. "Return fire!" she screamed. "All ships, return fire!" But her weapons officer was staring at his console in disbelief. "Admiral, our targeting systems are not functioning. Something is interfering with them. I cannot lock onto any targets." "Then fire manually. Fire at anything." A few ships managed to launch salvos toward the planet. The missiles and energy beams raced toward Earth, carrying enough destructive power to devastate continents. They never arrived. General Webb watched the incoming weapons fire with professional interest. "Interceptors? Deployed and engaging," Colonel Chen confirmed. "Our defense grid is performing above projected efficiency. No hostile fire will reach the surface." On the screens, humanity's defensive systems went to work. Incoming missiles were destroyed by precise laser fire. Energy beams were absorbed by shield satellites that converted the attack power into additional energy for the Aegis network. The alien weapons, which had devastated worlds, were stopped completely. "Launch Valkyrie!" Webb ordered. From 12 aircraft carriers positioned around the globe, hatches opened that the crews had never been allowed to examine. From each one rose sleek fighters that looked nothing like any aircraft humanity had publicly revealed. They were small, fast, and carried weapons that bent the laws of physics as the aliens understood them. 144 pilots, the best humanity could produce. The children of children who had been selected and trained since birth for this single purpose, launched into space. The battle for Earth had begun in earnest. Admiral Vexness could not believe what she was seeing. Human vessels, impossibly fast, were weaving through her fleet like predators among prey. They moved in ways that defied physics, accelerating and turning at angles that should have killed any living pilot. "How is this possible?" she demanded. "They should not have this technology. Our intelligence said they were centuries behind us." Her second officer was trying to track the human fighters on his display. "Admiral, I am detecting multiple weapon types we have never encountered. Some appear to be derived from our own technology, but modified beyond recognition. Others are completely unknown." One of the human fighters screamed past the bridge viewport, so close that Vexness could see the pilot inside. The human raised a hand in what she later learned was an obscene gesture before launching a torpedo that took out the communications array. "Admiral, we have lost contact with half the fleet," the communications officer reported, his voice shaking. "The ships are still there, but we cannot reach them. The humans are jamming everything." Vexness watched another warship explode on her display. The Dominion's fleet, which had expected an easy conquest, was being systematically destroyed. "All ships retreat," she ordered. "Fall back to the jump point. We must warn the homeworld." But it was already too late. The humans had anticipated this. As the surviving Valorian ships tried to flee, they found their escape route blocked. From behind the planet's moon, where they had been hiding with their engines cold and their systems silent, emerged humanity's true battle fleet. These were not the small fighters that had been harassing the Valorians. These were warships, massive vessels that dwarfed the Dominion's cruisers. They were built from alloys the aliens had never seen, powered by reactors that should not have existed, and armed with weapons that turned physics into a suggestion rather than a law. The human flagship, a behemoth named the Defiance, moved to intercept the fleeing Valorian fleet. Its hull was covered in writing from every human language, messages from the billions of people who had worked in secret for 50 years to make this moment possible. Admiral Vexness stared at the approaching vessels with something she had never felt before in her long career: despair. "This is impossible," she whispered. "They could not have built this. Not in 50 years. Not from what those 4 scientists could have transmitted." Her tactical officer checked his readings again, hoping he was wrong. "Admiral, I am detecting more ships emerging from concealment positions throughout the system. Hundreds of them. They have been here all along, waiting." General Webb watched the alien fleet on his display. Most of their ships were destroyed or disabled. Only a handful remained operational, including the flagship. The human fighters were holding position, waiting for orders. "Signal the Defiance," he said. "Tell Admiral Kowalski to offer them one chance to surrender." Colonel Chen looked surprised. "Sir? After what they intended to do to our cities? They threatened us because they did not understand us. They will understand us now. Better to have prisoners who can report the truth than corpses that tell nothing." The surrender offer was transmitted. For several long minutes, there was no response. Then, slowly, the surviving Valorian ships began powering down their weapons. Admiral Vexness sat in her command chair as the humans docked with her vessel. She had lost 47 ships. 47 ships that should have been more than enough to conquer this world. And the humans had barely suffered a scratch. The doors to the bridge opened, and human soldiers entered. They moved with professional precision, quickly securing the bridge crew. They wore armor that seemed to absorb light and carried weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. A human female walked in last. She wore a different uniform, covered in rank insignia and medals. Her hair was gray and her face was weathered with age, but her eyes were sharp and cold. "I am Admiral Chen," she said in perfect Valorian. "You will be taken to Earth as prisoners. You will be treated according to our customs of war. But first, I need you to understand something." She walked closer to Vexness, until they were face to face. 50 years ago, you captured 4 of our people, scientists, civilians, and when they escaped, they sent us everything they had learned about you, your technology, your culture, your empire. Admiral Vexness said nothing. There was nothing to say. "We knew you would come eventually. We knew you would see us as prey. So we prepared. Every nation on our planet, every resource, every brilliant mind, all working toward a single goal: survival." She pulled up a hologram showing the wreckage of the Valorian fleet. "This is what happens when you threaten Earth. This is what happens when you underestimate humanity. We do not surrender. We do not submit. We adapt. We overcome. And we destroy our enemies." Her voice grew even colder. "Someone should have warned you not to draw our notice, because now that you have it, we are going to learn everything about your empire. We are going to find your homeworld, and we are going to make sure you never threaten anyone ever again." Admiral Vexness finally found her voice. "You cannot hope to challenge the entire Dominion. We control 2,000 worlds. We have millions of ships. You have destroyed one small fleet, but one small fleet that was supposed to conquer us without difficulty," Admiral Chen interrupted. "Imagine what we will do when we consider you a real challenge." She turned and began walking toward the door. "Take them to the transport and send a message to the Valorian Dominion. Tell them Earth is now aware of their existence. Tell them they have 6 of their months to release all slaves. Disband their military and surrender their leadership for trial." Admiral Vexness's eyes widened. "They will never agree to such terms." Admiral Chen paused at the door and looked back. "I know," she said simply. "We are counting on it." On Earth, General Webb received the report that the Valorian fleet had been neutralized. He allowed himself a moment of satisfaction before turning to the next phase of operations. "Begin construction on the expeditionary fleet," he ordered, "and contact our allies. It is time the galaxy learned that Earth is no longer sleeping." Colonel Chen hesitated. "Allies, sir?" Webb smiled, a genuine smile for the first time in decades. Did you think we were the only species the Valorians have threatened? Admiral Korvath has been in contact with us for 30 years. He and others like him have been waiting for someone to stand up to the Dominion. Now they have someone to rally behind. He turned to the main screen, which now showed stars instead of enemies. 50 years ago, 4 scientists bought us time with their courage. Today, we honor their sacrifice by ensuring that no one will ever threaten Earth again. And tomorrow, he straightened his uniform. Tomorrow, we go to war. Across the planet, in homes and shelters and bunkers, humanity learned what had happened. They learned that they had been preparing for this moment without knowing it. They learned that their leaders had kept secrets to protect them. And they learned that they had won. But more importantly, they learned that the universe was not empty, that there were enemies out there who wished them harm, and that humanity had proven it could face those enemies and triumph. The flags went up in every nation. Volunteers flooded recruitment centers, scientists redoubled their efforts. And everywhere, in every language, the same message was repeated. Earth was awake, and Earth was coming. High Commander Zorthak stood before the emergency assembly of the Valorian High Council. The great chamber that had once filled him with pride now felt suffocating. Every seat was occupied. Every display showed the same horrifying footage, the destruction of the Third Expansion Fleet. "This is a minor setback," Zorthax insisted, his voice strained. "The humans caught us by surprise. They had 50 years to prepare specifically for our arrival. It will not happen again." Elder Magistrate Thyros, the oldest member of the council, leaned forward. His scales were nearly white with age, and his voice carried the weight of 700 cycles of service. "A minor setback," he repeated slowly. 60 of our finest warships were destroyed in less than 1 rotation. Admiral Vexnus, commander of 100 successful campaigns, was captured, and now these humans have demanded our complete surrender. "Demands they know we will refuse," Zorthax countered. "They are trying to intimidate us. It is a bluff. They cannot possibly challenge our full military might." "Can they not?" A new voice came from the chamber entrance. Everyone turned as Admiral Korvath walked slowly toward the council table. He looked older than he had at the previous meeting, as if the weight of what had happened rested on his shoulders alone. "Admiral," Zorthax said with barely concealed anger, "you were not summoned to this assembly." "No, I was not. But I believe the council should hear what I have to say before making any decisions." Korvath reached the central display and activated a series of images. "These are transmissions we have intercepted from the human fleet during the past rotation." The images showed the human warships, impossibly advanced, moving through space in coordinated formations. But there was something else in the footage. Other ships, ships of designs the Council had never seen. "The humans have not been idle in the 50 years since they learned of our existence," Korvath explained. "They have established contact with 17 other species we have conquered or threatened, species who have been waiting for someone strong enough to challenge us." Council member Veltrix stood up in alarm. "That is impossible! We monitor all communications in our territory." "You monitor all communications you know about," Korvath corrected. "The humans developed new methods of communication based on principles we have never discovered. They have been building alliances right under our sensors for decades." Zorthax slammed his fist on his throne's armrest. "And how do you know all this, Admiral? How do you know what the humans have been doing?" Korvath met his gaze without flinching. "Because I have been helping them." The chamber erupted in chaos. Council members shouted over each other. Guards moved toward Korvath, then hesitated when they saw that the old admiral made no move to defend himself. "Traitor!" Zorthax roared. "You have betrayed the Dominion to these primitives." "I have saved the Dominion from itself," Korvath replied calmly. "For 800 cycles, we have expanded through conquest and fear. We have enslaved entire populations. We have destroyed cultures that existed long before our ancestors crawled from the oceans of Valoria. And we have told ourselves that we were bringing order to chaos, civilization to savages. He turned to address the entire council. But the truth is that we have simply been the largest predator in a small territory. We have never faced a true challenge because we have been careful to only attack those weaker than ourselves. The humans are not weaker. They are different. Elder Magistrate Thyros raised his hand for silence. Gradually, the chaos subsided. Explain yourself, Admiral, all of it. You owe us that much before your execution. Korvath nodded slowly. When I captured those 4 human scientists 50 years ago, I intended to do exactly what I told you. Study them. Learn about their world. Prepare for eventual conquest. He pulled up images of the 4 humans, taken during their captivity. Despite their situation, their faces showed defiance, not fear. But something happened that I did not expect. During the 6 days they were my prisoners, I spoke with them. I asked them about their world, their history, their hopes, and they asked me about the Dominion. His voice grew quieter. They did not hate us. Even after we captured them, even knowing what we intended to do to their world, they did not hate us. They were curious. They wanted to understand. And when I explained our history, our conquests, our empire, he paused. They pitied us. Zorthax made a sound of disgust. Pitied us. We are the greatest civilization in this galaxy. They did not see it that way, Korvath continued. They saw a species that had grown stagnant, a species that had stopped advancing because we had no challenges, no motivation to improve. They saw a species that had become so focused on conquest that we had forgotten how to create. He gestured at the display showing human technology. In 50 years, they went from barely reaching their own moon to building ships that can match our finest vessels. Not because they stole our technology, but because they understood the principles behind it and improved upon them. In 50 years, they did what took us thousands of cycles. Elder Magistrate Thyros studied the old admiral with newfound interest. You helped them because you believed they would defeat us. I helped them because I believed they would change us, Korvath replied. The Dominion needs to evolve, or it will die. Not today, not tomorrow, but eventually. Our population is declining. Our innovation has stagnated. Our conquered worlds produce nothing but resentment. We are a dying empire that refuses to admit it is sick. He turned to face Zorthax directly. The humans offered a different path. Not conquest, but cooperation. Not submission, but alliance. They do not want to destroy the Dominion. They want to reform it. Reform? Zorthax spat the word. We will not be reformed by creatures we should be ruling. Then you will be destroyed by them instead, Korvath said simply. Those are your only choices. Before anyone could respond, the communication arrays activated with an incoming transmission. A human face appeared on the main display, the same General Webb who had commanded Earth's defense. High Council of the Valorian Dominion, he said formally. I am General Marcus Webb, speaking on behalf of the United Human Alliance and our coalition partners. Your deadline to accept our terms has expired. Zorthax stepped forward arrogantly. Your terms were rejected, human. We will not surrender to primitives. If you want war, you will have it. Webb's expression did not change. We expected nothing less. But before hostilities commence, I want to make something clear. We are not seeking the destruction of your species. We are not interested in conquest or revenge. We want only to end the threat your empire poses to peaceful civilizations. Then you will be disappointed, Zorthax sneered. The Dominion has millions of ships. You destroyed 60. Even if you won every battle, it would take you centuries to reach our homeworld. Webb smiled slightly. High Commander, I think you misunderstand our situation. We are already at your homeworld. The display shifted to show an external view of Valorian space. The council members gasped in horror. Surrounding their star system, appearing as if from nowhere, were human warships, thousands of them, and alongside them flew vessels of a dozen different species, former subjects of the Dominion who had joined humanity's coalition. Our fleet arrived 3 rotations ago, Webb explained. We used jump technology we developed based on principles your own scientists had abandoned as impossible. We have been waiting in stealth positions while this conversation took place. Zorthax's face went pale. You are lying. Our sensors would have detected you. Your sensors detected exactly what we wanted them to detect. Nothing. We learned long ago that the best defense against detection is not jamming or hiding, but appearing so normal that no one thinks to look twice. The human general leaned forward. You have approximately 1 rotation to accept our revised terms. Surrender of all military assets. Immediate release of all enslaved populations. Trial of leadership for crimes against sentient beings. In exchange, we guarantee the safety of Valorian civilians and the preservation of your culture and homeworld. And if we refuse? Zorthax asked, though his voice had lost its confidence. Then we will disable your fleet, occupy your planets, and impose these terms by force. We would prefer not to do this. There will be casualties on both sides, suffering that could be avoided. But make no mistake, these terms are not negotiable. The empire you have built through conquest is over. The only question is whether it ends peacefully or violently. The transmission ended. Silence filled the council chamber. Every member was staring at their displays, watching the coalition fleet that had appeared around their homeworld. Ships from species they had conquered generations ago now flew alongside human vessels, united by a common purpose. Elder Magistrate Thyros spoke first. High Commander Zorthax, it appears Admiral Korvath's warnings were accurate. We face a choice between surrender and annihilation. Zorthax stood motionless, his whole body trembling with rage and fear. Everything he had believed, everything he had built his career upon, was crumbling around him. We cannot surrender, he finally said, but his voice was hollow. The Dominion has never surrendered. It would mean the end of everything we are. Perhaps, Korvath said quietly. That is exactly what needs to happen. He walked to stand beside the elder magistrate. I have spent 30 years preparing for this moment, not to betray my people, but to save them. The humans do not want slaves. They do not want subjects. They want partners. Trading partners. Scientific partners. Partners in exploring the vast universe that none of us have fully mapped. He looked around the chamber at faces he had known for centuries. We can continue to be conquerors, in which case we will be conquered ourselves. Or we can become something new, something better. The choice, as always, belongs to the council. Elder Magistrate Thyros rose slowly from his seat. Despite his age, his voice was strong. I have served the Dominion for 700 cycles. I have watched us grow from a single planet to 2,000. And I have watched us become the very monsters we once feared. Our ancestors did not build this civilization so that we could enslave others. They built it so that we could reach the stars. He turned to face Zorthax. I move that High Commander Zorthax be removed from his position and that Admiral Korvath be appointed as negotiator with the human coalition. All in favor? One by one, the council members raised their hands. Zorthax watched in disbelief as his own supporters abandoned him. When the vote was complete, he was alone. This is treason, he whispered. This is the end of everything we have built. No, Admiral Korvath replied. This is the beginning of something new. General Webb received the message 3 hours later. The Valorian High Council had agreed to surrender negotiations. Admiral Korvath would lead their delegation. Immediate cessation of hostilities was requested. Webb allowed himself a deep breath. The war he had spent his entire life preparing for would not happen. The millions of lives that would have been lost on both sides would be saved. The coalition's gamble had paid off. Colonel Chen approached with a report. "Sir, our scouts confirm the Valorian fleet is standing down. Coalition ships are moving to secure key positions. Admiral Korvath has requested a personal meeting at the earliest convenience." Webb nodded. "Arrange it. I want to meet the Valorian who decided to bet on humanity." The meeting took place aboard a neutral vessel in orbit around a dead moon. Webb and Korvath sat across from each other at a simple table. No guards, no weapons, just two old soldiers who had spent decades preparing for this moment. "You took an enormous risk," Webb said. "If your council had chosen to fight instead of surrender, billions would have died." "It was not a risk," Korvath replied. "I knew my people. They are conquerors because they have never faced consequences for conquest. When they finally saw what those consequences would look like, they made the rational choice." "And what about you? What will happen to you now?" Korvath made a gesture that Webb interpreted as a shrug. "I will likely be remembered as either the greatest traitor in Valorian history or its greatest savior. Perhaps both. It does not matter to me. What matters is that my species will survive, that your species will not have to fight a war that would have cost you dearly despite your victory, and that the galaxy will be a little bit safer." Webb studied the alien for a long moment. Despite their different species, he recognized a kindred spirit, a soldier who had seen too much war and wanted to end it, even at the cost of his own reputation. 50 years ago, Webb said finally, 4 scientists sent us a message. They told us about your empire, your technology, your intentions, but they also told us about a Valorian admiral who had treated them with respect, who had asked questions instead of just giving orders, who had seemed genuinely curious about humanity. He leaned forward. They said that if we ever had a chance to make peace instead of war, we should look for that admiral. They believed he was someone we could work with. Korvath was silent for a moment. "They were unusual humans. I have thought about them often over the years." "They came home as heroes," Webb said. "They spent the rest of their lives helping us prepare for your arrival. They always hoped we would never have to use what they taught us. They always hoped we could find another way." He extended his hand across the table. "We found it, thanks to them and thanks to you." Korvath looked at the extended hand. In his culture, such gestures were reserved for family and closest allies. He had never made such a gesture to a member of another species. He reached out and took Webb's hand. "The 4 scientists warned me when they escaped," he said. "They told me that if we ever came to Earth, we would regret it for the rest of our very short lives. I thought they were making a threat." Webb smiled. "They were making a prediction. Humans do not forget our enemies, but we also do not forget our friends. The Valorian people have a chance now to become friends of Earth. I hope they take it. I will do everything in my power to ensure they do," Korvath promised. 1 year later, the first human embassy was established on Valoria Prime. Human students enrolled in Valorian academies. Valorian scholars visited Earth's universities. Trade routes opened that brought prosperity to both species. The empire that had ruled through fear became a federation that cooperated through mutual benefit. Enslaved populations were freed and helped to rebuild their worlds. Former conquered species joined the new galactic community as equals. And in the history books of 100 worlds, the story was told of how a small blue planet had changed the destiny of the galaxy. Not through conquest, but through courage. Not through destruction, but through determination. Not through fear, but through an absolute refusal to be afraid. The humans had been warned that they were primitive, weak, and alone. They had proven themselves advanced, strong, and capable of building alliances that spanned the stars. They had shown that sometimes the greatest victory was not in winning a war, but in preventing one. And in the great halls of the new Galactic Federation, a simple message was inscribed in every language of every member species, a reminder of what happened when someone underestimated the children of Earth. They cautioned us. You do not want to draw Earth's notice. We should have listened. But beside it was a second message, added later, that spoke to the hope of a new age. They drew our notice, and we drew them into our family. Earth had awoken, and in waking, it had helped an entire galaxy wake up as well.